You're listening to East of the Rockies, the Michigan Student Softball Podcast on WCBN Sports.
Well, Mr. Burns had done it. The power plant had won it, with Roger Clemens clucking all the while. Mike Scioscia's tragic illness made us smile, while Wade Boggs lay unconscious on the barroom tile. We're talking softball, from Maine to San Diego, talking softball. Mattingly and Canseco, Ken Griffey's grotesquely swollen jaw, Steve Sachs and his running with the law. We're talking Homer, Ozzie and the Straw.
East of the Rockies is back. Season 2 of the Michigan Student Softball Podcast here on WCBN Sports. I'm Jeremy Parks. Alongside me, as always, Morris Fabry. Mo, welcome back.
Good to be back, JP. You thought last year was my last year. They thought 2016 was my last year. You guys are going to be telling your grandkids about your time at WCBN, and I'm still going to be recording episodes of East of the Rockies.
It's worth noting that we still have Morris's proclaimed final softball call score sheet back here in the studio hanging on the wall that he signed against Missouri a couple years ago. Yep. And he has not left yet. Obviously, we are missing Kevin Klein right now for fans of the show, but don't worry. Kev's coming back later in the show. Kev is coming back on the phone. He's going to call in from Chicago. Big guy with Big Ten Network now, that Kevin Klein. So we're going to bring him in for a little talk. But on the replacement side of things, WCBN's own freshman stepping into the limelight. Say hello to the world, Alex Drain.
Hello.
That was so weak for an intro. Hi. Okay, tell us a little bit about yourself, Drain.
I'm a freshman here at WCBN Sports, joined in the fall. I've been mostly doing hockey and men's, women's basketball, but now getting ready for softball season 1 week away.
All right. Do you think you can fill Kev's shoes? They're pretty big shoes to fill.
Not with the negativity. But
literally and figuratively.
for the most part.
Okay. All right. So East of the Rockies, Michigan softball team 41 is underway. We had media availability on Wednesday evening. We've got some interview bits coming up later in the podcast with Hutch. We've got some quotes from Tara Blanco. Got a little bit from... we're going to see what we have left. I might have run out of memory space with Megan Bobian. We'll take a look there. But we've got some interview material queued up for you as well. But we're going to get right into it. Looking back at last season, Morris, you were on the ride with me through the bullishness through Team 40. Recapping last season, just a little overview.
Well, it was largely a disappointing season, so much so that we never really got around to recording a final episode of the premiere season
we didn't.
of East of the Rockies.
No, we did not.
So this is going to take the place of that. Sorry to all the fans who were expecting an end-of-the-season extravaganza. I don't think it's going to happen. But yeah, Michigan was just never really up to the task of competing with the likes of Minnesota and with the likes of the elite programs from around the country. The closest they came to a marquee win was that BS tie against Florida State, where Michigan should have had a chance to hit in the bottom. But that's neither here nor there.
Had to catch a flight.
Yeah, had to catch a flight. Of course they did.
Spirit Airlines is it's tricky.
But yeah, it's a team that did not quite live up to the expectations, the admittedly lofty expectations that Hutch and the program have set over the past few years. Also a team that's lost a lot. Megan Betza is just about irreplaceable.
Yep.
Coming out of the pen. Kelly Christner was the team MVP on the offensive end of things. So it'll be a transition season, and it should be fascinating. There's still a lot of talent left on the roster.
Yeah, and again, I think another big turning point last season was in that very first week. We're going to be headed down to Tampa next week. Drain and myself. Drain is my new roadie partner. But last year, Morris and I, it was the Florida game, really. I think in the first tournament down at USF, a heart-wrenching loss to the Gators and just a pitcher's duel throughout the whole game. Kept putting runners on second base to start the innings late, and nobody could score. Michigan finally lost in that one, wound up losing twice on that weekend in a disappointing trip, and I think that really set the tone for the season.
Maybe. It's easy to say that in hindsight.
It is indeed.
the beauty and the pain of an early softball schedule like Michigan's is that you have plenty of opportunities to right the ship, and Michigan just could not capitalize. They lost to, like Baylor, Kentucky, mid top 25 teams that they could have used to sort of springboard a leap in the national rankings, and never could really capitalize.
And Drain, you're at the start of your career now.
Well,
welcome to the show. So I know you don't know a whole heck of a lot about last season, but just from your kind of perusals of Michigan softball coming in, what are your thoughts?
Well, last season, sort of a fallback for the program when you look at just sort of their history of their seeding in NCAA tournaments, normally host a regional or a super regional. We're just unable to do that last year. But at the same time, I think the expectations last year were maybe a little bit too high when in hindsight they were losing so much power on offense with both Sierras and Kelsey Susala. So perhaps it was a year that we should have expected less, and it was a letdown because of perhaps too high expectations. But there's definitely enough there to make this season interesting, and other additions, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And again, we mentioned the losses on the lineup. Megan Betza, a 1.4 ERA last year, led the nation in strikeouts with 412 on the season. Just ridiculous numbers. Kelly Christner, also a big loss. And actually, this is where we're going to bring in Kevin Klein, because we were talking about it before the podcast. Kevin has mentioned that he's going to make the argument for Christner being the bigger loss. So for those of you that are fans of the show, we're going to bring Kev back in here, all the way from Chicagoland. Kev, you're back on East of the Rockies. Are you there?
I'm excited to be back.
And that voice, boy, silky smooth as ever. How's Chicago treating you?
It's going well. Chicago's good. Obviously a little different heading into the spring schedule, not being in Ann Arbor, but I'm excited to kind of, go back to my glory days on East of the Rockies.
And you're back. So, okay, we're going to make the argument for Kelly Christner being the biggest loss from last year of that kind of core group of Christner, Ramirez, Monty, and Betza.
I just think, all four obviously are big losses just because, you look at Montemurano and Ramirez were two staples in the infield. Betza, obviously, her career was probably one of the best careers in Michigan softball history, at least in recent memory. But I think when you look at this team, I feel confident in Tara Blanco's ability in the circle. I feel confident in the addition of Megan Beaubien. I think one thing this team lacks is that power, and last year Christner was basically the only source of that power. She had 9 home runs, hit nearly or a little over 400, was at 500, through most of that first half of the year. And I just think the big question mark for me now on this team is not so much the circle, but that lineup and how that shakes out. Who is going to provide, that middle of the lineup bat besides Falk and Canfield?
Yeah, I agree. Mo, your thoughts?
I posted all of the departures for the team in our shared Google Doc with the agenda for the show. And I posited that the biggest loss was pretty clearly Megan Betza. Just if you look at the sheer volume of innings that she threw last year, she threw about 2/3 of Michigan's innings over the course of the season, had over 400 strikeouts. She was dominant, and while she wasn't quite able to get Michigan over the hump against the likes of the Washingtons and even the Floridas of the world, although that wasn't so much her fault, she was still such an integral part of this team and such a difficult to replace piece, given that we're so uncertain about what's coming into this Michigan rotation. Certainly Beaubien comes with a lot of accolades out of high school, but she's just a freshman. We can't expect much out of Leah Crockett, I don't think, and Tara Blanco last season I don't think showed that she's at least very likely to make a leap into being the kind of dominant force that Betza was. And like it or not, every game, 7 innings or 5 innings if you're lucky, you got to put someone out there in the circle, and Betza was a force, and she'll be tough to replace.
Yeah, and I think the one thing, in a 3-game series, you knew you were going to see Betza twice, and you knew you had a chance to at least win the series just with those 2 performances, because Betza was going to go out there and strike out 7, 8, 9, 10, however many it may be, give up only 1 or 2 runs, and give you a good performance. And I think, you look at last year, and Betsa was 25-10, which I think might be a little misleading, just because the one game I look back to is, we were that Florida game at the beginning of the year, or the Wisconsin game in Big Ten play that went into extra innings, and Betsa just kept you in the game. So it'll be interesting to see, what the circle looks like for the Wolverines this year. I still think, I guess I would say Betsa is probably the biggest loss now that I, put my argument out there, and Mo just, tore me down a little bit. But, Christner's a big loss, too, just because of how reliable a bat she was for 4 years.
Yeah, that's fair. I think, I don't know. I kind of am swayed to your argument, Kev. I love Megan Betsa, always will. But at the same time, I see a lot of potential talent coming up in Beaubien. I think that's a position that stands to have better stability, as opposed to, I think there's a lot of people that can potentially be bats at the plate. There's not a lot of people that can potentially be arms in the circle, which almost gives credence to the Betsa being more important argument. But at the same time, I think Beaubien is going to fill that role really well, and I'm not sure how the potential bats are going to fill the role with how inconsistent they were last season. And inconsistency is a question that we talked to Hutch about later in the interview. So...
Yeah.
Nothing? Yeah.
I think that's all fair. It just depends on how optimistic you are about all the returning players to this Michigan lineup, that they'll be able to take that leap and assume bigger roles with success, the way the lineup couldn't really fill the shoes of Sierra Lawrence, Sierra Romero, Kelsey Susala. The leap with experience is something that we've come to see within the last 10 years out of Carol Hutchins' program, and I am more willing to bet that last year was an anomaly than I am willing to bet that Megan Beaubien is going to come in and replicate Megan Betsa's production.
All right, so let's get Drain in the question. We're going to talk new faces on the team. Drain's a fresh face, so we might as well. It's fitting. So the freshman class coming in got 5 new faces. You're going to hear probably a little bit from Megan Beaubien later on here. Media availability, interviews. Taylor Bump, who could see some time at third base this season. That's a big question position for Michigan heading in to USF next week. Lou Allen, probably if not the most highly touted freshman out of this class, darn close to. And probably will miss the start of the season with a knee injury from what we're told. But still looking to make it back out for the Wolverines early on in the season and make a big impact. And then Sarah Schaefer, right-handed pitcher, and Natalia Rodriguez out of Claremont, Florida. So a little homecoming as well later on next week. But Drain, give me your thoughts on the incoming freshman class. Where do you see these pieces kind of fitting, and who do you think can make the biggest impact for Michigan?
The biggest impact is going to be Beaubien. She's going to be asked to do a whole lot right away. And when you look at her high school numbers and all of just sort of the credentials that she has, there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. The number 6 overall recruit, number 3 pitcher in the country. She actually went to high school not far from here in Monroe, Michigan. She threw 2 perfect games en route to her team's state championship season, or actually over the last 2 years of her high school career, a .35 ERA. She was just unfair to Michigan high school softball. And when you look at past Michigan aces, whether it was Betsa or Jordan Taylor or Haley Wagner, there's a lot of history of freshman pitchers for Michigan coming out and just dominating right away. And if there was anyone to put your money behind, it would be Beaubien. She has all the credentials that you would need. The Gatorade Michigan Softball Player of the Year, just everything to boost these high expectations.
Morris.
Yeah, my perception was not that Michigan high school softball was the top level of competition that there is in the country, and for that reason I was sort of skeptical, but I didn't do the research that Alex did, so I didn't know that, Betsa, Jordan Taylor, Haley Wagner were coming out of Michigan as well, so, maybe she's the next in that line.
The other, obviously, Lou Allen.
Not Betsa.
Lou Allen.
That's a strange
whenever she gets into the lineup is going to really be a factor, I think.
Gonna wreck.
Yeah. She's
a lot of ribs. A lot of Chili's dinners.
She's a pure power hitter, and that's something that the lineup really lacked last season with the absence of Romero especially. So they'll ask her to play whenever she is ready. Not sure about the rest of the freshman class, how much we'll see some of these. Sarah Schaefer, for instance, I'm just not sure if she's going to get a whole lot of innings. Natalia Rodriguez, she played a little bit in fall ball. Taylor Bump actually played a fair bit in fall ball. So maybe we'll see some of them, but I think certainly Bobian will have the biggest impact.
Kevin is still on the line. Kev, any additions on the fresh faces?
I think Drain covered it. He's following in my footsteps as well. I'm teary-eyed over here.
Wow, that's a lot to live up to over there, Drain.
Yeah.
Doing good so far.
Yeah, I did my scouting.
All right. Mo, you looked like you were going to say something.
Oh, I mean, I just don't remember Kev doing this kind of research that Drain
That's
already
awesome. Yeah.
put forth in his first episode.
I didn't need to say it, but
I'm not there to defend myself. So
I figured the fans would know as much, but all right. Let's see. We're going to end it off with Kev here. We're going to have you talk about things that you're excited for this season. Give me like your top and then maybe a couple dark horses.
things I'm excited for. A new softball season. Obviously, last year...
Good answer, Hutch.
Yeah, well, following in her footsteps, I guess. But no, I'm just excited to get it off, to get the season underway again. And I think, like it is for every year, right off the bat, Michigan will have an opportunity to face, a top 3, top 4 team in Florida, a South Florida team that gave them trouble last year. But realistically, next weekend they should go 4-1, and maybe if they can sneak one against Florida, it's a 5-0 weekend, and we're having a totally different conversation than what we were having after the first weekend tournament last year. I'm excited. I think Aiden Falk can really, come into her own, build upon a really good junior year this year as a senior. I'll be interested to see if Madison Uden, how much playing time she gets as a sophomore, because she showed some flashes last year in her first campaign. And I think the big question mark is what Bobian can bring to the circle, and how Blanco will fare as that, that 1A or 1B with Bobian, because I think last year in Blanco's first real year of being that number 2, she was the number 2 to Betsa, right? I mean, every day or every series, you knew you were going to see Betsa twice and not, a mix of Betsa and Blanco on that third day. So I think those are some of the things I'm looking forward to, and I think this first series or this first tournament could be a telltale sign, and I'm just interested to see how the lineup comes together, because there are, a few different moving pieces and whatnot. So I'm interested to see how the lineup comes together, how they fare against some decent competition right off the bat, and then you follow up that DeMarini tournament with the ACC Big Ten Challenge. So it's a lot of good games at the beginning, and I'm just excited to see what Team 41 has in store.
All right, Kev, before we let you go, we've got some breaking news for the podcast, and I need your thoughts. You're the guy to ask on this. Word on the block for all the Michigan faithful: Skeeps is dead.
What?
They did not get their liquor license renewed.
You know what? I got no problem with that, though. I'm a Rick's guy. You know that.
I just needed your input on that because you're the guy to talk to, but I just thought I'd let you know. Yeah, you can go read about it.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, love you, Kev.
All right.
All right, that was Kevin Klein here on East of the Rockies, the Michigan Student Softball Podcast on WCBN Sports. Yeah, Skeeps is dead, guys.
I'm shocked at how composed he was.
I know, right? I thought he was going to go off for a second when he gave that what, but...
He's like a real whole adult.
Yeah, it's like he actually grew up or something. I don't know. It's kind of scary. Okay, so a little bit of postseason recap, some new faces, kind of got the table set for the season. So now we're going to move into our segment on best and worst case scenarios for this team. So players, best worst case scenario, and record. I guess last season, again, looking at the numbers, we felt down in the dumps like the whole season pretty much after Kentucky, and it was still a team that went 43-13-1. I mean, Mo, tell me if I'm wrong. It seemed like we were maybe a little bit too harsh.
Well, I can't tell you you're wrong because that was the record. The record was 43-13-1. You were absolutely 100% accurate.
Now tell me I'm wrong.
I can't do it. And yeah, I in general, I'm opposed to the practice of judging a team too harshly on the strength of wins and losses. During the downturns last season, I tried to make it a point to sort of appreciate the little things that go on during any given softball game and not get so tied up in the results of those games. But we're kind of in the business of doing that. So, Michigan had an easy schedule last year. After the beginning of the season, the Big Ten was sort of a dumpster heap aside from Minnesota. And Michigan still dropped a few games that they shouldn't have in the Big Ten without even playing Minnesota. Hopefully that competition steps itself up this year, and so a 20-3 record in conference will be more impressive than it was. But as it stands, while the record looks pretty, I think it's just a case of Betza overpowering the teams that Michigan should beat, and not much more than that.
Drain.
Yeah, I mean, it's indicative of the high bar that's been set that 43-13-1 is a bad year or a down year. And it's also just being right next to two seasons where they were consistently top 5 in the country and made it to the Women's College World Series. So when that's your bar, obviously that kind of season's gonna look rough in hindsight. But when you're talking about schedule, I mean, how are we feeling about the Big Ten being better?
Haven't done my research
because
I think obviously it's just going to be the question of Minnesota again.
They don't play Minnesota.
I know,
and
but getting into tournament kind of feel.
Yeah.
We'll play Minnesota in the Big Ten tournament more than likely is the idea. But
because I was looking at the Big Ten schedule, and Michigan plays 7 3-game sets with teams.
Yes.
And 6 of those 7 were against the bottom 6 from the Big Ten last year.
That's never been Michigan's problem, really, steamrolling through Big Ten conference play.
I'm just saying that's going, like, what we know about how good the team will come from non-conference play.
Yes. More than likely. I think we had really high expectations, Morris and I, coming out of that Florida game last season, and then from there it just kind of dwindled off. I mean, the USF game that night, they were a ranked team, and it was just a completely different story, and then from there on out, the inconsistency just kept showing.
That's true, but at the same time, in years past, even in those sort of walkover games, Michigan was winning those games 4-1 last year, whereas in seasons past, they'd be winning 10-1 in 5 innings. They'd be hitting... they didn't have anybody in double-figure home runs last year. That's the first time I've seen that happen in 3 years of following the team. And so I kind of took those first 2 years to be the standard for Michigan softball. Maybe
that is
a bit
fair.
Short-sighted. But I thought that we could still tell something about the team when they weren't winning by as much against the dumpster heap of the Big Ten.
Right.
And that's probably a fair point. I mean, in terms of when you go down the roster, where is the potential to get better? I think certainly some of the positions, Faith Canfield is the one we have to probably be most excited about. She had what's kind of the model. I mean, if we're looking for someone to have a big sophomore jump, you look at what she was able to do last year. But like the big question becomes how some of these players did in Big Ten play. Like, for instance, Tara Blanco, not good early on, got a lot better offensively in Big Ten play. She can get back to somewhere like where she was over 400 in 2016.
So I guess in terms of worst case scenario, I think best case scenario, I would love to see Michigan keep non-conference play to 4 or 5 losses, somewhere in there. I mean, it's a tough non-conference slate. You've got a lot of good games. Florida, obviously, next week. Doubles against Notre Dame and Florida State and Tallahassee the following. Go down to Texas, which is historically a good softball program. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for Michigan. So, especially with a lot of inexperience and a lot of youth, this is something that Hutch actually mentioned in her interview as well, as people said last season a lot that Michigan was a young team. Well, they really weren't in her eyes, and they're a lot younger this year. So I think that might show early on in non-conference play, but I think a total collapse would be anywhere north of 7 or 8 losses.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I also think it's fair to, I guess, characterize this as also a relatively young team. They only have 2 seniors in Falk and Blanco who are going to play every single game guaranteed in the starting lineup. They're going to be relying a lot, I think, on Lou Allen and Megan Bobie. And last year, I think Maddie Uden was the only freshman who played a significant role, and she didn't even have to do that much until Big Ten play came around when Lindsay Montemurano was sort of struggling to find her groove at third base. And so, yeah, Michigan's going to have to be relying on freshmen for, the first time in my memory.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
But on the flip side, though, yes, they'll be relying on freshmen, but this was a very good recruiting class, and so at least you're not relying on scrubs. So
no scrubs.
Yeah. So at least there is a lot of potential there when you are relying on freshmen. But then there's a number of these names who played a little bit last year and who are going to be expected to do a lot more. Looking at the fall ball lineups, for instance, it seems like Alex Subject is going to be the third baseman, or at least she played a lot there during the fall. And Madison Uden, too, played quite a bit at shortstop. So those are players who didn't play all the time last year, and they're going to be asked to do more. And in many ways, their potential for this season is going to come down to how do those players step up.
I think another worst-case scenario is with Blanco adding presumably a lot more leg work in the circle, that batting average, again, just suffering between 2 years ago and last year, 404 in 2016 at the plate with a lot of good power numbers. Slugging was somewhere around 750, 748 now that I look down at it. And then 2017 dropped almost 130 points roughly to 288. Slugging percentage was down about 300 points down to 475. So, Morris, we keep laughing because last season you asked in the preseason media availability the question of, do you think your bat is going to suffer as a result of your increased role in the circle? And it was essentially laughed off. But as we said last season, time and again, that rang pretty true. So you'll see the answer that she had to that in the interviews in a little bit. But your thoughts on that?
She's human.
Yeah.
She's got to graduate from college. She's got to work on pitching. She's got to work on hitting. She's got to live a normal life. You can only devote so many hours to practice, and you can only get so much from the natural talent that she obviously has. And so it's totally fair to expect her to not replicate her freshman, sophomore year numbers at the plate while she's carrying an increased load in the circle. You just hope that the total product of what she puts forward for the team is a step up from last year, and I think that she's capable of that.
Yeah, so like the optimistic hope for her offensively is to be somewhere in between where she was last year and where she was 2 years ago.
Realistically optimistic.
Yeah, I would say, optimistic would be getting back to 2 years ago, the 2016 numbers, and maintaining a roughly 2 ERA in the circle. And
that's like best case scenario.
Oh, absolutely. But we're doing worst case. So
sure.
Best case scenario, your record for the team this year.
Oh, geez. How many games do they play?
I would actually have to go back and count them, but I think, give me just 1 second, and I'll actually do a count, but I think it's going to be somewhere roughly
I think they played 23 Big Ten games.
Best case scenario,
57 was last year's total.
Best case scenario, they sweep the Big Ten.
Yes.
I think that's realistic, given that the Big Ten's not very good, and they don't play Minnesota. And best case scenario, in non-conference, they compete with Florida. I don't think they have a chance to beat them. Go 2-2 in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, and maybe sustain 2 more losses in the rest of non-conference. That's 5 non-conference losses.
So being a 5-loss team heading into the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, that's the absolute best case scenario.
I'm at 4. I think, again, fans of the show, the bull is back. Ride the bull. I think Florida is, that's a tough one to try and put in a W. So I think that's a character building loss. I don't know. Michigan beat Notre Dame once out of 2 tries last year. And Florida State, obviously, a bit of a screw job there out in California. But I think they come out of that with maybe 1 loss in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. That's my. I don't know. They do play a lot of games. They play once Friday, twice Saturday, and once on Sunday. So maybe a little bit of fatigue towards the end of the weekend. But I don't know. I like it. And then Texas, I think that's a clean sweep. Bang. All the way through Austin.
Good to know that's what you think.
Yeah, if you got the Longhorn Network, you're in luck. If not, listen to WCBN Sports, because Lucas Vargas, who is going to be our fourth addition to the show this season, is currently working a swim meet tonight for Michigan Swim and Dive, but he will be here. He's also an Austin native, so he'll be on those games over spring break. But anyways, that's my thought.
I mean, so when you look at the schedule as a whole in terms of non-conference play, and with the preseason rankings, Michigan was ranked number 16 or 18, depending on which one you look at. They face Florida State twice. They're ranked. Florida, they're ranked. Texas is not ranked. Baylor is ranked. So in non-conference play, they don't actually play that many ranked teams necessarily. And obviously you have teams like Texas and Notre Dame that have been good at times in the past. But in terms of top competition, it's I could see 4 losses for sure as a best case scenario in the non-conference schedule, and then absolutely sweeping the Big Ten. They're just
On the bowl.
Yeah, they don't play any good teams in the Big Ten. So,
Drain, by the way, I got our rental car for Tampa yesterday, so we're cruising Enterprise to the beach on Thursday afternoon.
Okay, what was it though?
What was what?
What was the car?
I went with like the not like quite compact, but like the one above. It's like a Nissan Versa. We went through Enterprise though; they'll pick you up. Also, there's this great trick for those of you that are listening that are interested that are under the age of 25. If you join USAA, like the auto insurance company for the military, you don't have to be in the military to join USAA as like a member and not have insurance. You can then book through USAA and avoid an underage fee at any car rental in the country.
Would have been nice to know last year.
Right? I know. Morris and I tried to rent a car while we were there last year, and they wanted like $300 for the weekend.
Did you pay it, or did you?
We ended up walking to Chili's.
Yeah, we Ubered to our hotel, and then we walked to Chili's every night. Which, by the way, we're staying at the same hotel with the pirate ship in the pool.
Sick.
Which means we can walk to Chili's again. And guess what? Every drink is 2 for $1, and they serve Bud Light in piping hot mugs. Morris and I had some great conversations over the table at that Chili's.
Yeah.
The East Fowler Road Chili's.
For sure. Some nice Uber rides, too.
Yeah. But anyways, that's next week. You're going to catch every game except Sunday. We will not have Illinois State on air. We got to fly out. That was the only flight I could get us. Would cut a little bit too close to that Illinois State game. But you'll have UAB, Georgia State, Florida, and USF all on WCBN Sports. And then I want to say USF is on air on...
UAB is on
or UAB is on air on Friday at 10 a.m. if you're in Ann Arbor on 88.3. So it's going to be fun.
Just realized I'm working on Saturday from 11 to 6, so I'm probably just going to have my phone off, and I'm just going to come home and listen to the YouTube video.
Okay, I won't tell you anything. We'll keep the
Twitter,
group clear.
no group me.
Yep, nope.
Yeah.
That never works. Have you ever tried that with anything before?
Never.
I've tried it so many times where I'm like, I'm just not going to pay attention to the Michigan basketball game until I get home. And sure enough, because I'm in like several group me's that only discuss Michigan basketball, like, yeah.
I have not tried it with like a Michigan sport or anything. I have done it now 2 years in a row with the Australian Open men's final because that comes on 3:30 in the morning.
Drain's a big tennis guy.
So thankfully I don't like the group me doesn't go crazy about that, but I have just like woken up right away, boom, turned it on, and it does work. You just have to trust yourself.
Yep. But Drain is going to get his first taste of the road. Morris, do you have any road tips for traveling with me to give to Drain?
I can't think of any. You were such a saint to travel with.
Wow, that's I could think of like 3 off the top of my head that you should know, but
yeah, I got nothing.
No, all right. I'll always pick up the tab.
Okay.
Yep. Keep in mind, Drain is 18, 19.
That's the joke.
Going to turn 19 on Tuesday.
Happy early birthday. And we're taking you to Florida. That's right. I remember because I had to put your birthday in when we reserved the plane. But awesome. Yeah. Mo's trying to remember times that I paid for our meals now.
Yeah, kind of. I'm just trying to remember the trip as a whole.
Yeah. We did a few. We did several roadies.
Yeah.
Mostly Big Ten tournament. We're going to be going to Madison this year. Morris, you can ride along for that one.
That would be nice.
Yeah, man. Mo will also probably be coming, and Kev might be coming to Oxford for the Miami of Ohio tournament.
This is news. This is as much news to me as it is.
I thought you said you wanted in on that.
No, I'm interested.
Yeah. No, you're coming.
Okay, good.
Yeah. It's gonna be like dads and sons. It's gonna be like you, me, and then Drain and Lucas. And it's going to be like old men taking young men to their first ever broadcast. We're going to let them spread their wings, except it's not their first ever broadcast.
Yeah, that sounds like an ordeal, but a worthwhile one.
Also, WCBN vastly improved sound equipment this year. So for those of you that haven't tuned in between last softball season and this, we just dumped a lot of money into sounding a lot better on air. So get ready for that.
It's good to know. I feel like we've also dumped about 15 minutes into administrative stuff on this season preview pod.
Well, I like to keep people up to date,
No, that's fair.
Did Morris ever hear the story about the placebo effect and the new equipment?
I think he did. Wait.
I don't know that I did.
Because you're not in that group meet.
All right, fun side story off case of softball. So we paid $7,000 for all this new equipment, right?
Yes.
And so the first night, I thought people were using it where I told them to go pick it up and take it to the game down at Chrysler that they were supposed to be calling. And nobody told me they didn't. So they were on air, and it sounded crystal clear. Mm-hmm. It sounded perfect. And so I was like, this is amazing. I'm crying. It's so great. And then they send back in the group me like, oh, we took the small case, which has the old gear in it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what? Why does it sound so good? And then Nate Sorensen, that son of a gun, just sends back magic touch. And that's it. So then they told me it was placebo effect, where because we spent all the money, I thought we sounded a lot better than we did. But I kid you not, it sounded so clear, you would never believe it.
I believe it.
Anyways, that's why JP now has a placebo effect. So work that into softball somehow.
Can do.
Yeah. But anyways, I don't know. Let's go through. Yeah. Let's wrap it up. We're kind of pushing like 35 minutes. So why don't we go through the Tampa tourney and then we'll wrap it up for the season preview.
So last night, Mo and I were scouting the Tampa teams. Not the toughest tournament ever. I think USF could be tricky though. They're expected to be better than they were a year ago. I mean, obviously, Florida's the really tough one. And then you have Illinois State, Georgia State, and UAB. Those are a little bit lower level teams. I'll just start with UAB.
We'll go game by game. Yeah, UAB.
So UAB went 21-33 overall, 12-12 in Conference USA play. So they're a very middling team in a not very good conference. They're a team that Michigan should be able to flex their muscles, kind of ease into the season. And I think that would be a game that honestly would be the one to start Bobby in, because UAB hit 226 as a team last year with 30 home runs as a team. They just can't hit to save their lives. And so that's one where you would absolutely try to ease the new pitcher in. Yeah.
Players to watch for on that team. You're probably going to see Claire Blount starting in the circle for the Blazers, but also potentially Bailey Barnes, who is an all-state first-team freshman coming in.
I didn't put what state that was, but I think it was Alabama.
Yeah.
For whatever that's worth.
I'm going to guess. But yeah.
They were undefeated.
There's also a note in
ball.
here that the link to their 2018 roster was broken, so
Yep.
We could not get a full grasp of the lineup, and we'll do more research before we get down there next week.
Yeah, they did not lose in fall ball. They beat Wallace State, Georgia Military Academy, Enterprise State, Central Alabama Community College, and Snead State. So they're
Did they play DeVry?
I don't think they played DeVry.
Okay. Anyways, that will be on Friday morning at 10 a.m. That one's on air here in Ann Arbor on 88.3, and as always online.
They have a new coach, Amanda Ellis, who is the second coach in program history. So, maybe something interesting will come from that.
All right.
That should definitely be the easiest game of the weekend.
Okay.
Followed by, then we have Georgia State. They went 36-25 last year, 18-9 in Sun Belt play. So they're actually one of the better teams in the Sun Belt. They finished third in that conference a year ago. They lost, unfortunately, in their conference tournament. Obviously, didn't get into the NCAA tournament as a result. But they return both of their main pitchers. They return 5 of their 8 everyday players. One of the interesting things to note, though, they have a hitter, Megan Litumbe. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that last name, but she hit 22 homers a year ago, tied for 4th in all of college softball. So she's a big hitter. They've made the NCAA tournament twice in their history, 94 and 2011. They're kind of the opposite of UAB. They can hit, but they can't really pitch. Their team ERA was 3.69 a year ago, and they were picked to finish third in the Sun Belt in the preseason media poll.
Hold yourself together, Jay.
I love this kid for a reason. Like, he's so unassuming, and then he just drops those little like little stabs real quick. I love it. So who are we looking for starting in the circle for them?
Let's take a look. They had two. They're both their pitchers are coming back.
Doesn't matter.
That was a big thing that I took Lucas to media day on Wednesday, and that was a big thing that he really liked was Hutch saying, like, this is what we say, like, ball don't care about who's throwing it, or like ball don't care who's gonna hit it. And so Lucas is a guy that loves those little like idioms, and he just took it and ran with it. So he's been using Hutchisms like on me all week. I'm sorry they couldn't be on the pod, but they will be in the future.
They returned both their main pitchers. Kinsley Jennings was the 2017 Sun Belt Newcomer of the Year. Both started about 20 games last year. Both had ERAs over 3, so neither are terrifically great pitchers. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw either Jennings or Chance.
Okay. Then we move on to the biggin.
Yep.
Preseason number 2. The
Florida.
rematch.
Florida. They lost to Maryland last year.
They did.
Maryland.
People forget that.
Maryland, who went 11-39 on the season, 4-19 in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So, that's the argument that Michigan could beat Florida, right? I mean,
well,
it's one game.
I mean, Michigan is not Maryland, if that's what we're saying.
Both start with M.
Yeah.
People don't forget that.
They
very
lost
often.
They lost
in both logos.
Lost the World Series to Oklahoma last year. But oh my
God, they started their season 29-1, and their one loss was to Maryland.
The new Rutgers joke.
Dominant in the SEC. They had the same record Michigan had in conference play in the SEC, but Michigan didn't lose to Maryland.
And back in the circuit. So they lost Delaney Gurley, which is actually, for Michigan fans, pretty good. But God knows they have another arm waiting in the wings to be just as good as Delaney Gurley, who last year had a .71 ERA. I think as a staff for the vast majority of the season was sub-1 and comfortably sub-1. But they bring back Kelly Barnhill, who Michigan saw last year. As Morris put here, Kelly Barnhill, not to be confused with the Newbery Medal award-winning author of The Girl Who Drank the Moon. Okay. But yeah, she had 13 shutouts last year. Her ERA was .51, a .61 whip, just ridiculously disgusting numbers. And they bring back Alicia Ocasio, who did last year. Was she the one that finished out the game for Florida? I think she scored the game-winning run, as I recall.
I think it was Barnhill followed by Gurley, and Ocasio. I don't think she scored the game-winning run.
pitch?
She was thrown out at the plate. At
That's
the one
right.
that
You're right.
airmailed the catcher.
Yep, I remember that.
I think it was Subject.
But anyways, yeah, there's a notable stat here too. In 82 innings in SEC games, Kelly Barnhill has surrendered how many runs, Drain? Guess.
Well, it's like 6 runs. 6 runs, but only one was earned.
Yeah. Either way.
Boy, how would he ever guess that with the same Google Doc that we all three have?
I just wanted him not to look at it, all right? Yeah, anyways, that's going to be gross. Probably a loss. Are we all in agreement on that?
Yeah, unless...
No, we're not, because the Bull is back. That's a win for Michigan. Chalk it up.
Probably a loss. I hope Michigan doesn't get run ruled, but
nope,
it's a distinct possibility.
They're not going to get run ruled. It's going to be a close game. I am a 2-1 Michigan win in this game with a random home run coming from somewhere deep in the lineup off of Kelly Barnhill. Because
Taylor Swearingen,
of course,
pinch hit.
Yes. Or Faith Canfield.
Probably
that's
not
me.
Pinch hitting.
Yeah, no, but that's me.
It'll probably be a loss, but probabilities always leave the possibility of something happening. And
wow, I like that. Did your math teacher teach you that?
Which one?
I feel like that's a 6th grade math class poster. Probabilities always leave the possibility of something happening.
Okay, so few people actually understand how probability works and can accurately read what probability means. So even if it's a 70% chance Florida wins, right, then all of a sudden there's all that possibility that Michigan could win. So, and it's softball, it's sports, weird things happen. So it'll probably be a Florida win, but you never know.
Reminds me that Simpsons episode where Homer's trying to bet on football and has someone give a 52% lock of the week, and then after it goes wrong, he's like, "Oh, when you're right 52% of the time, you're wrong 48% of the time."
I also got to throw this out here. My phone just buzzed as we're recording this. Got a mention from all-time superfan Griffin Hickman, part of our superfan duo with Stuart Burlow. But it said, telling somebody on Twitter that they need to add East of the Rockies onto their listening list listening list. Is that? Yeah, that's pretty right. Outstanding crew with funny, insightful content. So welcome to the family, Drain. You've provided insightful and funny content.
But yeah, I think this Florida lineup is also going to mash.
Yes,
Like they were not amazing last year.
You know what?
They didn't lose anybody. Pretty much everybody is coming back. Kaylee Kvistad and Amanda Lorenz are just fearsome hitters.
But Delaney Gurley is gone. The reason Michigan didn't win a College World Series several years ago was Delaney Gurley.
Was it Gurley? I thought that was Lauren Hager.
Lauren Hager was there too, but also Gurley helped.
Sure.
I remember we sat in your house and drank Rolling Rock and cried as we watched the championship.
I thought that was Eli Sherman's place.
Was it Sherm?
Yeah, I think it was.
Oh, we were at Sherm's.
We were drinking Rolling Rock, though.
Yep, classic. All right, last game of the weekend.
We got two, man.
Technically two.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Illinois State. I'm forgetting because we're not calling it, so I haven't read about it.
I have to give the Redbirds a chance. South Florida, 32-24 on the season, 9-8 in American play. They were actually a lot like Michigan last year, a team that had a lot of preseason expectations. They were in the preseason top 25. Unlike Michigan, they actually didn't make the NCAA tournament, just really struggled down the stretch. They finished 4th and 8 in American play and then just got easily put away by Memphis in the first game of their tourney. But they return a ton of players. 9 position players started at least 37 games a year ago. 7 of those 9 returned. Last year they had 3 pitchers start 14 games or more, and they all return. So they are a very experienced team. They bring a lot of people back. Picked to finish 3rd in the American Conference. A few all-conference players, including Cheyenne Eggins, Kaylin JoJo McGill, a couple nice pitchers that are coming back. Michigan will probably see Eggins. She was all-conference first team a year ago.
And Ken Erickson, a really good coach, too.
Yep.
Career 660 coach this will be his 20th season, I believe, or 21st season with USF. 1997, I just did the math. Yeah.
Do you know what his major is?
It's sitting right in front of me. I like this. Major in political science with a Latin American emphasis, a master's in public administration. Really hard-hitting information on these bulls.
You know, JP, you mentioned Florida as the turning point of last season, but to me,
USF?
The South Florida game is where the sort of air of inevitability surrounding truly great teams, which I thought surrounded like even Michigan football a couple of years ago, but especially Michigan softball when they made it to the national championship. And then, the year prior to last where... why are you reading this info is so useless? When you're watching a truly great team, you are convinced that they're going to triumph no matter what the odds are against them. Unless they're going up against the likes of a Florida. But against South Florida, I felt the entire game that, okay, this is where they're going to get the final out of the inning and end the threat. This is where the lineup's going to come through and score the runs to put them over the hump. And it never happened and never got that feeling back.
We were really sad when we drove home in the dark that night.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Get out. This info is so useless. I'm not casting a spurt. Well, I did kind of trash your 15 minutes of...
It wasn't 15.
Exposition or whatever. All right. Carry on. You can be
last
critical.
game of the weekend. So are we a win against USF? I think that's a win.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's a game you should win.
Yep. Okay.
Nothing taken for granted.
All right. Redbirds. I actually remember a decent amount about Illinois State from last season because they had one of the only coaches that I've seen that has had as long a tenure as Carol Hutchins and has won over 1,000 games.
Yes.
So
one of only 18 coaches to win over 1,000 games.
Clearly over the hill.
Hit it, Drain.
Illinois State, 33-24 overall, 20-6 in Missouri Valley play. They were the conference co-champions, but got upset in the tourney semifinals. Didn't make the NCAA tournament. As a result, they also return a ton of players. 9 position players started over 40 games. 7 of those 9 return. They return 4 hitters who hit over 300. They lose a lot of their power, though. They had a girl that hit 19 home runs, 19 of their 57 total.
Jordan De Los Reyes, I remember her,
Yep, she does not return. All their pitchers come back, though. Their team ERA was not terrific, 3.38. quite a few all Missouri Valley Conference selections, and they were voted the preseason Missouri Valley Conference favorites via the conference coaches poll. So this is the cream of the crop of the MVC.
They actually took a bit of a tougher fall ball schedule from what you've got in here too. They played Notre Dame twice. They played Illinois. They played Wisconsin. That compared to playing some of these like community colleges and things that some of these other teams are doing, that's pretty good.
I'll tell you, I looked at their schedule. I did nothing more than look at their schedule because I wasn't scouting this team. But they were not a walkover. They didn't have any marquee wins over ranked teams that they played, but
everything was close.
Yeah, they weren't getting blown out. I wouldn't expect this to be a gimme run rule. And if Michigan does run rule them, I think that's a big positive.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's where we're at. I'm 5-0 on the weekend.
I'll just be safe and say 4-1.
Yeah, I'll go 4-1.
Never pays to be safe. Yeah.
I feel like it would kind of pay to be a prudent gambler as opposed to just throwing
Morris,
money on the
it's an
back of the
NCAA
ball.
violation for student radio to gamble on games that they call.
Well, it never pays to be safe sounds like a gambling adage.
No, it's just life's too short to bet the under. All right. So that's going to do it for episode 1, I think. Drain, how's it feel?
Feels good. I'm gonna plug. I'm going to do a blog on WCBN Sports. Is it .org?
.org.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna do a softball season preview with my extended thoughts on the season. So take a look out for that.
You know, it's been a long off season, and we are kind of rusty, but we haven't even talked about the interviews that I assume are going on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to add that in.
Okay. So are you just going to throw it on the end?
I was just going to, once I cut them, I need to figure out what actual portions we have.
All right, so I guess you're all going to hear that.
I'm going to cut out this last part.
No, don't cut it out. No! Why would you cut it out?
We don't cut anything.
No, this is part of what makes the podcast fun to listen to. We got a bunch of dry analysis over the course of the pod, but then you have, moments of candor like this.
I'm just going to throw the interviews here at the end.
For.
Just splice them at the end, and then it'll be my voice later on going, and here's our interview with...
Yes.
That's the plan. Yes. Okay, interviews at the very end of the episode. All right, so we're going to close it out with the interviews for episode 1 on East of the Rockies.
Also, that's how you get people to listen to an entire episode.
Where are the interviews?
Tell them they'll be here. Don't tell them where they're going to be.
So now I'll go back into the episode and splice in some little moments in between talking where I'll just be, the interviews are coming soon.
Yes.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 1 of East of the Rockies, the season preview. We're not going to do another episode, I don't think, until we come back from Tampa, since we've already previewed the tournament. So keep an eye out, not next week, but the week after. We'll do the Tampa recap and looking forward to Tallahassee. Kevin Klein, it was great to have on the show from Chicago. For Morris Fabry, Alex Drain, I'm Jeremy Parks. As always, we leave you with a good night and a go blue. And listen to all the broadcasts down in Tampa next week. We'll be tweeting those links from our Twitter account at WCBN Sports. As always, good night and go blue. Here's the interviews.
No, we don't really talk about last year, and we don't really. I mean, whenever there's a new season, we don't really think. Sorry.
No worries.
We don't really think back on the past season, So I think we've just really been working on staying focused and being competitive. And I think even this year is even more special because we have so much depth that we don't really even need the motivation. It's just you see someone next to you competing, you're going to compete. So I think that's what's kind of changed.
That's great. So senior year, any major goal that you want to get out of the way before you're done here? Anything that you're really looking forward to?
The goal's always a national championship,
right?
And that's always going to be the goal. But I want to start. We all want to start small. I definitely want to win the Big Ten. I want to win everything. You know?
Exactly.
But it sucked not winning the Big Ten last year. It was devastating and terrible. Honestly, worst part of the year. And I feel like that's the focus right now is just to basically I not only just want to win, I just want to dominate teams. I want to mercy teams. I just don't want to win because that's when we have the most fun. And people get more relaxed if you're winning by a lot of runs and everything. Right. So yeah.
Has there been anything that you've been looking at, especially in terms of mechanics over the off season?
Not really. really. Maybe a few little pitching tweaks, but nothing big. Yeah.
And then kind of last thing. So last year, obviously, splitting time between both hitting and pitching. Was there anything that you kind of pinned that maybe kind of switching between those two roles throughout a game might have affected one or the other? Stats slightly down last year from the year before, that kind of thing.
I mean, I don't think pitching had to do anything with it. I think it was just, I didn't produce as much as I did. And, that's basically it.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Last year you did get better as the season went on. So is there any way that you plan to just maintain that upward trajectory for like the entire season?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to plan when you're gonna do good, But just being consistent, having a consistent mindset with everything, and I think that maybe why my stats and everything went down last year is I just probably wasn't in the right mental mindset, and I think it was all mental. I don't think anything physically had to do with my swing or anything. I think that I was just thinking too much at the plate, and basically to think less, just see ball, hit ball.
Would you say like your like teammates like help you like push out that mental slump?
I think it was more like my dad. My dad's a coach, so he lives in California, but he coaches, and just kind of going back to when, like, he would always send me videos of, like, my sophomore year when I was doing really good, and kind of, like, knowing, like, I have it in me. And, I mean, I can bring that out whenever I want, but basically he was there to just, like, clear my mind and just to remember, try to, like, remember who I was, for me to remember who I was. Yeah.
Heading down to Florida next week. Is there any one big thing other than dominating that you're really looking forward to first big trip of the season?
I mean, I'm so excited to get out of Michigan, and I'm so excited just to, play another team other than ourselves. It's like, it sucks playing yourself all the time.
Anything, especially with the Florida rematch? Again, last season was a marathon, classic kind of game.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends on Florida, played with a lot of them, like, throughout my years of playing travel ball, and we're really good friends, but, it's always just a good game while playing them. I love it, and I know it's going to be a good game this year, and, I'm looking forward to playing them. I'm looking forward to playing all the top 10 teams that we're going to play this year, and it's going to be really exciting to see what we're going to put out there.
Awesome.
How do you think the expectations for you differ from this year and last year?
I don't think they differ much. I've always had, like, from Hutch to myself, we set high expectations for me, and I don't think they change much. It's more that I need to produce more, and I need to. That's basically it. Bottom line.
What would you say is like the team's biggest strength this year?
Our biggest strength, I would say, is our grit. We're really gritty when it gets down to it. Is that what a bunch of people say?
Love it. Yeah.
I think we have really good grit. We fight a lot. We do this thing earlier in the year. It's called the OKC Challenge. It's basically more of like a strength and fitness kind of thing, and we divide it up into 4 different teams, and we compete against each other, like how many things you can do, and like running, and there's a whole bunch of things that go into it. But it really opened my eyes to see like how much grit people have and how much they're willing to push themselves. Like when you think you don't have enough, there's always more, and that was kind of what I was telling my team. It worked. We did really well in the OKC Challenge, and it was really exciting to see. And I think that's what really was the turning point for me to see like what this team is capable of and what we're going to be able to do this season.
Well, the toughest part of your schedule this year comes kind of towards the beginning. Some of the early season tournaments, playing Florida again, and so how are you going to approach knowing that you have to fight right out of the gate?
Because you have to. It doesn't matter who you're playing. I don't really focus on who we're playing because we just need to play every game the same approach. We worry about what we do. We need to control what we control, which is our effort and our attitude. And we can't play the opponent, otherwise we'll play up to an opponent, we'll play down to an opponent, and we just need to play the game. So we try to focus on the game.
I think in terms of coaching on the game, last season, consistency a little bit up and down. As a coach, how do you look at your team, and what do you instill in them to kind of teach consistency as opposed to, say, something mechanical that you can fix?
Well, it is a tough thing because young kids tend to be inconsistent, and we were not as young last year as people said we were, and we're a lot younger this year. And young kids need to learn to control their thought processes, because that's what gives you consistency, and to approach everything the same, and to try to be aware of when your anxiety is getting the best of you. But more than anything, how you approach every at bat. And we always say the ball doesn't know who's throwing it. The ball doesn't know that Florida's ranked and we're ranked different. And the ball doesn't know who's supposed to win. The game doesn't know who's supposed to win. So if you can stay focused on those things, which are just the ball, you have a chance to be consistent. You have a better chance, because what's inconsistent? Their emotions, their reactions. So thought process is a large part of what we try to. Is really, we'll spend most of our time. We're done coaching, worrying about the ball and softball. Now we're just going to be about managing their game, managing their emotions.
And what do you see in the freshman class this year?
What I always see: little puppies with tails wagging, excited about every day. Showing up every day. Megan's been fantastic. She's ready to go. And she's probably most excited, as we all are, for her to pitch against somebody other than us. We're tired of watching her. But all of them, we've got some enthused kids that are excited about their opportunity to be here. And I love freshmen that way. And they've got a ways to go, all of them, in one category or another. But they seemingly are unfazed by the challenges. They're ready to add to our program. They want to be a part of the program, and they're going to have to learn how to play the game at this level, which includes the ups and downs that go with it. And there's a lot of ups, but there's a lot of downs. There's a lot of hard times. And those are things they're going to have to learn, because they've never been challenged like this. They've never had to earn their starting position, and these are things that I see knock kids down. So we're trying to help them through it.
And you had a lot of really good players graduate last year. So is there any specific people that you see stepping up to fill some of those voids?
Well, I think I've been really pleased with the people sitting up here. All of them have taken it upon themselves to raise their level and help raise the people around them. And that's what great players do. They don't just show up and be great. They raise the people around them. Aiden has worked really hard to be the leader of this group. And I think Faith has really stepped that part of her game up. They understand to be great, they need more than just them to be great. So, you lose good players. We lose them. I've been here 34 years. Every year I lose good players. Who steps up? And some of it is who do we recruit, and some of it is people that have been working need to be up in their game. And that's what we hope has happened with some of our junior and seniors, that they're now ready to really contribute. It's their time.
Aiden and Faith were both talking about the communication on this team. What have you seen so far this season in terms of communication?
A lot of things I judge all year long. The adversity and the difficult part hasn't come yet, because all the communication, it's good now. They communicate with each other. I do believe they have worked they've worked hard to make sure the seniors don't lead from the top down. They've tried to make sure that they lead from the back and push forward, and I really appreciate that. And I think we can get caught up in we have so many traditions, and we have quite the deference system, and I don't think that was working as well for us, and they recognize that. And so they've just tried to be better teammates, the upperclassmen, and I think that really Aiden and Faith have been very invested in that.
Can you talk about how exactly they push up the underclassmen from the back up?
Pardon me?
Can you talk about how they push them from the back up more specifically?
Well, leadership is not just about doing things yourself and leading by example. I always say it's your job to show up and work hard, be great, and You don't get a brownie point for it. That's what we pay you for to begin with. And so, but to be aware of those around them and recognize that they don't totally understand how it all works. And they've never had to work as hard as they're working now. I mean, freshmen have no idea how to work at this level. No clue. They get knocked on their butt the first couple weeks of practice in the fall. We start lifting weights. They're gassed. They can't even lift their legs. And then they're trying to perform on the field, and the game is faster than they've ever seen. And so what do you need? You need to upperclass and say, it's okay. I went through this too. Come on, get up. You can do it. You can do it. No, you can't have a bad attitude. You can't walk away and be, screw this. You have to get going. You can do it. We all do it. This is what we do. So I think they're doing a really good job of that.
You have some players, especially Aiden and Tara, who have some positional flexibility or play multiple positions. So how do you plan to utilize that flexibility to your greatest advantage?
Well, Aiden's one of our best bats. And so she's got to be in the lineup somewhere. And last year we started putting her in the outfield because I needed a bat. And that spot was open. And to her credit, she said, I'll do anything. I just want to play and I want to win. And so we'll use her in the outfield. When Tara pitches, we have the ability to put Aiden at first base, but I've got several options for that. We've got Taylor Swearingen. We have Taylor Bump, who can play over there. We have Lou Allen, who we recruited to play there. And Lou will be out for a bit. She hurt her knee, but fortunately we expect her to be back. And Lou's a big hitting kid who's on, in the USA softball program. So, we have high hopes for that. But yeah, the kids who are flexible, like Tara pitches, and then when she doesn't, we put her over at first base. That just makes us better. So hopefully they'll make us better.
So you're talking, Coach, about the freshman class and they contributed, and then also I know that last year you guys had a strong senior class.
What about? I'm sorry.
So I know last year you had a strong senior class. Can you talk about the strengths of the junior class with Faith, Natalie, and Katie, and what they bring to the table?
Well,
so starting to enter their leadership behind.
I think that's a great question because it's not just on the seniors, and sometimes the seniors put too much pressure on themselves, and they've got a lot going on. They're getting ready to graduate, and they're trying to get their next life in order. And I've often every year at some point told the juniors, listen, help them out. Make sure that it's not all on them. And Faith is the leader of that group, but you've got Katie Alexander, who has worked her tail off to go from being a bullpen catcher to our starting catcher. And you've got Natalie, who it's Natalie's time to come out and just do what she does, because she's a really great player. And getting her to play with confidence is our biggest challenge. And to recognize that a lot of what will occur, whether we're successful or not, is really what our junior class does. I do think the junior class is integral. They're huge. And the year we won the national championship, we had a couple great seniors. It was our junior class they were the reason. Our junior class with Ritter and Becky Marks and that group, they were integral. And so the juniors need to, they have a big role to fill. They've gone from being the underclassmen to the upperclassmen. And we expect the upperclassmen to show up. Awesome. Make sure you print that in bold.
What do you see being this team's biggest strength?
I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you after we start playing. I hope our strength is our team. That we believe in playing our role. That we can, as a group, all just commit to doing our part. I want to see us be great at that. I think we get caught up in kids who go internal and worry about their game, and this is not your game. This is always Michigan's game. And that's what I'm preaching right now, daily. Just do your part, and you don't have to do more than your part. Just help us. And if you're committed, just help and show up with, I walk in the field, I'm just here to help us win. Not, I'm trying to bat 500 and I'm trying to do this. And if you can be about the team, we can have a great team. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us, because what we don't have is we don't have that marquee, the Romo and stuff, and we haven't. But I expect other people to step it up. Faith stepped up last year, became All-American. I'm hopeful that we see that from other kids. And we don't have Megan Betzeff. We have Megan Bobian. I'm hopeful that she steps into that role. So what we need is for people to step up and go from being good to great. But again, is that our strength? I don't know. I don't judge anything in our preseason. You know, I see our work ethic. I think we have good work ethic. We have showed up every day with a good attitude. So I'm pleased with that.
As a coach and a coaching staff, how do you...
You're listening to East of the Rockies, the Michigan Student Softball Podcast on WCBN Sports.
Well, Mr. Burns had done it. The power plant had won it, with Roger Clemens clucking all the while. Mike Scioscia's tragic illness made us smile, while Wade Boggs lay unconscious on the barroom tile. We're talking softball, from Maine to San Diego, talking softball. Mattingly and Canseco, Ken Griffey's grotesquely swollen jaw, Steve Sachs and his running with the law. We're talking Homer, Ozzie and the Straw.